If we do so within 3-4 hours of bedtime, we will negatively impact our sleep onset and structure. Type 2 fast twitch muscle fibers undergo atrophy and loss to a much greater degree than type 1 fibers. Jump into bed for some great sleep, or maybe sex, or academic merits. How does this belong here? Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Lifestyle Mix, where we enjoy a mix of beneficial tips for better, healthier us. And in today's mix, what shower when, sleep, sex and academic merits, and bone mineral density. And we shall dive straight into the shower, pun intended. Falling asleep, as many of us know by now from different sources, requires core body temperature to cool down by around 1 degree Celsius or about 2 degrees Fahrenheit. And in order to cool down the core, our body uses melatonin. Melatonin is not just a sleep hormone, but is a powerful vasodilator. It widens the blood vessels, especially on the periphery in our hands and feet, which allows to bring warm blood from the core to the surface of the skin, wherefrom the heat radiates away into the cooler air. The core is cooling and telling the brain it's time to sleep. Now, if we take cold shower, our body will sense the cold and immediately constrict the vessels and the skin to prevent heat loss. And the body will also think that it's being exposed to cold, so it needs to warm itself up to prevent hypothermia. And this way, we not only just stop the core cooling process by vasoconstriction, but we also are triggering the core warming. So we do exactly the opposite of what's needed to fall asleep. Now, warm shower works via vasodilation. It widens the blood vessels on the periphery, which allows the core to cool down into the relatively cooler ambient air from that periphery. The core temperature drops and we start feeling sleepy. So if we want to mobilize ourselves, get ourselves alert and focused, ramp up catecholamines like norepinephrine, epinephrine, and dopamine, we should get cold shower. But if we do so within 3-4 hours of bedtime, we will negatively impact our sleep onset and structure. So we reserve cold shower for the morning when we need that invigorating boost. But in the evening, we take a warm shower instead, cool the core down, and jump into bed for some great sleep, or maybe sex, or academic merits. Now, how does this belong here? Well, in early 1960s, Lucius Fox, who has nothing to do with Dark Knight, published a study which looked at college students with poor academic performance and inefficient study habits. These students were instructed to select one particular place where they would study, such as a particular desk or library carrel, so that would be used exclusively for studying. They were told to go to their designated study spots only when they were ready to work. And if they began to daydream or feel anxious or do anything other than study, they had to get up and leave that spot, and they could only return back when they felt ready to concentrate again. This intervention aimed at building a powerful association between a specific physical location and the desired behavior. And all the negative behaviors, such as daydreaming or anxiety, were actively unlinked from this study environment. Wiring the efficient behavior, in this instance studying, with the correct stimulus, that is, the study spot, proved to be really good for academic merits. Later on in the 1970s, Richard Bootson, who is the inventor of the cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, implemented this same principle in relation to linking the bed as a stimulus with efficient behaviors, namely sleep and sex. When we bring our life into our bed, in the form of scrolling, reading, ruminating, planning, task solving, and whatnot, we are linking the physical notion of the bed to the behaviors that don't belong there. And with time, this becomes habitual, and we end up doing all this other stuff in bed while being unable to fall or maintain quality sleep. And the solution here is elementary. We should just stop bringing our life into our bed. And if we link the bed with sleep and sex only, we get much better at sleeping, as the Fox's college students did with their academic merits. Now let's move to the bone matters. And this topic has been triggered by the fact that every Thursday I give anesthesia for the trauma list, and I see multiple patients coming in with bone fracture. Some of them would probably be inevitable due to the nature of injury and the extent of force, but the others are totally preventable. And I'm talking about hip fractures and other fall-related injuries later in life in our senior years. These injuries are subject to two main causative factors: the fragility of our bone tissue and the loss of balance. So maintaining strong bones and ability to balance ourselves are essential to prevent these injuries, particularly later in life. Now let's look at the bone mineral density in the context of time. As we grow, we achieve about 90% of peak bone mass by age 18 in women and age 20 in men. Then there is some further consolidation and we reach our absolute peak around age 30. Then we usually have a plateau period about 10 years, and unless we are prioritizing bone health and take action to maintain and improve it, after age 40, we just gradually lose the bone strength, and particularly that's true for women when they hit perimenopause and their estrogen levels drop. So how do we counter that? In order to have strong bone tissue, as strong as possible, we need to load it with pressure, which stimulates it to grow and strengthen. If we think about different age groups, this priority and action for it is particularly important under the age of 30 and especially under the age of 20, when we build our bones towards their maximum potential. So entering resistance training, which is the same as strength training, in childhood and particularly in adolescence, doing that initially with body weight and then gradually bringing in free weights and machines, is essential for the child and young adult to reach their maximum bone health. Apart from this resistance training, there are also other types of osteogenic activity that are extremely beneficial to build strong bones. And here belong high impact activities like gymnastics, volleyball, basketball, jumping and running, and odd impact sports. So these are the sports that involve rapid changes in direction like tennis and squash. And of course, that goes hand in hand with adequate nutrition, particularly protein and calcium intake, and sufficient vitamin levels, especially vitamin D. And as we grow and particularly get older, these priorities only become more important. So we need to engage in osteogenic activity during the lifetime and into our senior years to maintain the best bone mineral density. We need to be doing weights, we need to be doing high impact activities throughout the life if we care about preventing fractures and frailty. Now let's look into the aspect of maintaining balance. And here we have two main contributing factors. We need healthy brain, so the centers that are responsible for receiving information from the peripheral receptors, processing it and delivering commands back to the muscles to maintain balance. All these need to be healthy and efficient. And secondly, within our muscles, we need to have a sufficient amount of very specific fast twitch fibers, which are fibers type 2A and 2X, that would allow us to respond in a rapid way to the loss of balance. As we age, if we don't focus on training our muscle, we will gradually lose it. And the research shows consistently that these type 2 fast twitch muscle fibers undergo atrophy and loss to a much greater degree than type 1 fibers. And with this loss so pronounced and disproportionate, we lose the ability to generate rapid, powerful muscle response, which is essential to prevent the falls in case of loss of balance. And in order to maintain these important fast twitch fibers, we need to be lifting heavy weights, because this is exactly when we engage them, these type 2A, 2X fibers. And we also need to engage in explosive power training like box jumps, jump squats, ball slams, and so on. And of course, that goes hand in hand with everything else that positively affects brain health and regular balance training a few times a week. And this applies to both men and women and at any age. For example, if you think, oh, I'm 50, 60, 70, 80, I've never done this before, so it's too late for me. No, it's not true. And you can still change a lot if you begin carefully, take it slow, progress gradually while following the principles we have just outlined to maintain the optimal bone health, to maintain and develop type 2A and type 2X fast twitch fibers. I'm sure you've thoroughly enjoyed this first episode of Lifestyle Mix. Put your questions for further episodes in the comments below, and we'll get all that covered in future.